Hello, you plastic bags full of premium fuck beef. Jim Sterling here, and this is NieR Automata Demo Some Numbers. It's the name of it. It's a demo for NieR Automata, the sequel to NieR. But the demo is called Demo 120161128, I think. I think that's the number that I noted down correctly. I didn't note it down, I'm looking at the file. And I think the file... I think that's the... I don't know why... It's a Square Enix thing. It's a Square Enix thing. Anyway, here's the game. It's pretty cool. Not all that great at it, but, you know, what's new. Very hack and slashy. You are the lady with big swords that are just kind of floating behind her, as swords tend to do. And you fight a lot of robots. There's some similarities to the original NieR, or at least one of the original NieRs. It was released as two different games. I'm trying to do this from memory, but in Japan at least there were two different NieRs with different but the same protagonists. It was a whole complex, convoluted Square Enix thing. But at least one NieR made it to the States, which I played back in the day when it first came out. Very frustrating game for me, that one. Not that the gameplay itself was frustrating, although there was some of that. The game itself, my reaction to it was one of mixed feelings. It was a game I really wanted to like, but there were things that it kept doing that held it back for me. I realised it's got a big fan following. A lot of people loved it. I wanted to love it. That's the thing that frustrated me. I wanted to love NieR so much because it was weird, eccentric, did a lot of bold things, did a lot of clever things, played around with the medium of gameplay itself to do some interesting things, you know? But at the same time, I found the combat fairly lackluster, and some of its clever ideas, it repeated. There was a text adventure bit that was particularly interesting and clever. I've got to stop saying interesting. Particularly inventive at first, but then it kept happening, and then it just stopped being interesting. I just said interesting again. You know what I mean, though. You know, it kept telling the same gag more than once, and way beyond the effectiveness of that gag. So that was a shame, but hopefully this one will improve upon that. I'd like it to. Obviously, I always like to play... I always much rather play good games than bad games. Obviously. I've talked before about... Yeah, this bit's... Might as well just talk about the game while it's happening on screen. The fight against this... There's a later fight against these sort of saw blade arm things. The camera is not particularly helpful for some of these boss arenas, at least looking at the demo. As you saw there, I was kind of trapped with the camera and the thing blocking me. I couldn't see a damn thing. I was just spamming the dodge button, which sometimes seems to work. But I haven't played the first NieR since it first came out. You know, it was released on at least the Xbox 360 in the US. I'm not sure if it came out on PS3. Actually, that was the weird thing about it, wasn't it? The PS3 and the Xbox 360 were totally different versions. I don't know, I should have Googled that before I started chatting shit, but hindsight, 2020, all that. This is some dialogue. The text for the dialogue is way slower than the spoken dialogue, which is fine. You can just do what I'm doing here and press a button to rush the text along without interrupting the speech. But never do that. Never make the dialogue text slower than the spoken word. It's always extra annoying, at least to me. So, after the big fight there, this is just some standard gameplay with combat woven into it. As well as the hack and slash, as you can see, you can command the little robot as well. Little robot's got a rapid fire mode and a powerful laser shot that has to recharge. And the melee combat itself it's standard, you know, just keep hitting square and use triangle here and there for the heavy attacks, you know. You played many games like that, I'm sure. And it's got a really nice dodge system, actually. It's very satisfying to use the dodge in this. You know, some games have like a really shitty roll just really ineffective evades. But the evasion in this feels very quick, very responsive, very safe, if that makes sense. I trust it. I trust it to get the job done. There are some games where trying to use the evasion, whether it's a dodge or a sidestep or a backstep or whatever, sometimes feels like it's putting you in more trouble. They won't have any. It won't have any invincibility frames in there. It'll be slow and awkward. Where's a game where that's evident? I know as well as just being mapped to a terrible control, the dodging in Dead Rising was never all that good. There's worse examples than Dead Rising, but either way, what I mean to say is here, I really like the dodge maneuver. Although these projectiles I still haven't quite wrapped my head around. They seem familiar. They seem like I dealt with those in the first NieR game. I could be wrong. I'm trying my best to remember. Because like I say, I literally haven't played the original NieR since it first came out. I mean, I wasn't even living in this house then. Jesus, that was a long-ass time ago. Like, it's just hit me how long ago that was that NieR came out. I remember I was still at Destructoid at the time. I reviewed it for that. Huh. Anyway.
Nothing's ever easy.
Like with the first game, and again, using memory, so I could be wrong, but I believe the first game played with camera perspectives a lot. Always tried to make the game feel different. Like the game was always changing, even though it was still an action hack and slash type game. Little camera changes. You know, before we got in here, there was it kind of took on the appearance of a side-scrolling platformer while we were running up the side of the tower. And there are some overhead shots as well. It switches to that sometimes, and it starts looking, especially with these bullets when they come flying thick and fast, almost looks shoot-'em-up-esque. And it's interesting, because it really is, it's just artifice. Oh, this was me thinking my finisher had beat that robot. It didn't. You know, it's falsifying the sense of the game being different, even though it's mechanically not changed at all. But you know, illusions can be powerful things. You know, some people criticize the illusion of choice in Telltale games, and I don't mind it because it's a good illusion. The difference between the illusion of choice being acceptable and unacceptable, in my opinion, is whether or not it fools you effectively. Telltale's kind of played its hand in that regard, so it's very difficult for them to really... It's getting harder for me to get sucked into the decisions in a Telltale game, because after playing so many of them, you get used to what they're doing. Whereas the original Telltale, you know, the first series of The Walking Dead, that was very effective. But you compare that to a Quantic Dream game, where failures are so inconsequential and so obviously inconsequential that the illusion is just worn on its sleeve, and that punctures the whole... You know, it's very simple suspension of disbelief stuff. We apply that to, you know, questionable, unrealistic things in movies and TV shows typically. But, you know, it works for games as well, on a mechanical level as well as a narrative level. You've got to suspend your disbelief for certain things to work. And here, I feel that. Like, I feel like the game takes on a different flavour when it switches cameras like that. Or other angles like that. There we go. The prompt didn't come up, so I was a bit confused by that box for a moment. I also like just how seamless it is as well. Like, the camera will just swivel round without missing a beat. And it doesn't feel jarring. It doesn't feel like my brain has to catch up and resynchronize with the action on the screen. Some games, they change camera perspective, and then your brain just has to rewire, even if it just takes a second. But here, very smooth, very intuitive, really good stuff. These robots have shields. I don't know if you saw the dialogue box, or the subtitle at the bottom. These robots start off with shields, which means you can't use your little droid friends. that was supposed to be a a projectile noise. That rapid fire projectile, but it didn't sound very good. So you see what I mean here with it's gone overhead just to give you an overlay of these bullets coming in. Again, bullets I'm still not used to. You can hit them and that disables them, and as well as evade them. But they always seem to get me when once I'm in the thick of it. You see what you do there is you just edge closer toward a robot by knocking the projectiles out, but once you're focused on a singular enemy, then the bullets get me. And I'm sure there's a way around it, I haven't. I'm sure some commenters will chime in with, well, you got to do this, you're rubbish, you stupid diaper idiot. You know, something like that. There we go. I recorded this footage yesterday. You know, downloaded it on the PS4, of course, played it a bit. I say a bit, I played the demo to completion. Halfway through recording this, actually, is when I heard the news about Carrie Fisher, which was obviously quite a blow, especially because, you know, she had the heart attack and everything just before Christmas, and then was in a stable condition, and you want to assume that's the end of it, like that, okay, scare, they're over it, stable, it's fine, but of course, heart attacks being what they are, being back in a stable condition is no guarantee of being out of the woods, so, no, real blow, that one. I mean, in the year, as we all know, has been full of that stuff. Just a lot of legends, a lot of icons leaving us, which is a real shame. And you know, I could see devastating in some situations. You know, people lose their heroes. Last year, I think it was last year or the year before, was Rick Mayall, who was a personal, in terms of comedy performances, Rick Mayall was a personal idol of mine, and that was, you know, crushing to lose him. I've been rewatching old episodes of Bottom, which is one of my favourite sitcoms ever, and that show's so good you forget that Rick Mayall passed on, but every now and then it just sort of hits you in the brain again, and you're like, well, fuck. And there's going to be a lot of that now, with so many people having left us. It sucks. I realise I'm not saying anything particularly philosophically poignant. It sucks. I mean, obviously it does. That is not a revelation. Not a revelation. But, you know, I got nothing elegant to say. Elegant or eloquent. Either way, I got nothing. I can't even dodge a giant saw blade. So, don't come to me for eulogies. You know. I know it's been tempting for people to anthropomorphise 2016 and blame it all on that, but I find that psychologically unhealthy. Blaming it on the year, because, you know, time, abstract concept, innit? Human-made. Death and tragedy and everything doesn't really care about the calendar. So my worry is it'll hit 2017, some people will assume everything's reset and everything's fine again. And then we'll have our first celebrity death in January, and then people will be like, oh no, it was supposed to be different. And I realise most people are joking, but even as a joke, the temptation is there to assume that the clock resets and everything will be fine, and it is just a shit year, but that's all in our heads. And letting that temptation take over can be a little, I think, personally, you know, unhealthy to do. Because you are setting yourself up for a disappointment and a real shocker.
Is that?
Not that I'm trying to be judgy or anything, it's just my perspective. I feel like I brought the whole mood down now, halfway through. I apologise for that. But, you know, can't really pretend sad things aren't happening. But at least we got a giant Constructicon. which was my first thought when I saw this thing, was holy fuck, they got Devastator up in the mix, although a little closer to the Michael Bay Transformers than the proper Transformers. So this is an example of a big old boss fight. It's one of those classic boss fights, isn't it, where you get a giant boss that's way bigger than the player character, so you stick them behind a ledge. It's rare to get the whole Shadow of the Colossus style thing with where a big sized boss like this is on the same playing field as you. They're always behind a ledge, aren't they, or coming out the ground, so we just see the top half of them. Anyway, I like the designs of the robots, as I did with... That's one thing I do remember liking a lot in the first NieR. Don't mind me just being terrible at dodging at this particular point. Entirely my fuck up, for which I apologise. But yeah, the robots I find in this game, they're oddly cute, but there's a sort of soullessness to them that makes them nonetheless effective as enemies. Like, especially the cannon fodder style enemies we've been fighting up till now. Kind of adorable. Got the little round eyes and the little dome heads. Cute. But also just kind of creepily bereft of life. That was some brilliant manoeuvring on behalf of yours truly. Utterly wonderful manoeuvring.
Alert. Incoming enemy attack from below. Proposal. Evade.
We gotta watch out for this bit, you see. See? Comes up out the road. Cheeky robot. What you want to do, and this is where the robot fucked up, what you want to do is burrow down, below, and then behind. You go behind whoever this person's name is. 2B, is it? Or is it not to be? That was a great joke. Anyway, what you want to do is you want to go behind her, then come up out, then she's on an isolated island of road. Then you go onto that and smash that, and she's buggered. She's done for. Then again, I'm not a giant robot oil rig, so, you know, clearly it knows something I don't about how to handle this particular situation. Hacking in. I don't understand any of what's going on. Then again, that's true to the series form. Tell you what I liked in the first NieR. As well as some of the character designs, like the moon-faced boy. The moon-faced boy, very delightfully creepy. Loved Liam O'Brien's voice acting in it as the Book. He played the Book, and he had this kind of... what's the best way to describe it? Kind of... almost like a... oh, I don't know. I keep wanting to say Lestat, but not Tom Cruise Lestat. How Lestat should be sounding from the books. Such a weird analogy to make, but I started drawing an analogy without having a firm grip on what the analogy was. That's where I fucked myself up. And the thing is, if I'm playing a game in real time and talking, I can just edit round that. But with this pre-recorded footage that I'm commentating over, I mean, I could set some timestamps and stuff, but it's a whole thing. So, I'm just leaving that in. Very much like this game's left in a few AI issues. These robots aren't particularly clever. Several times I've noticed them do that. They'll just be like jumping in the corner somewhere, not quite knowing what to do, which is fine. I don't mind little tiny AI bumps like that, as long as we're not seeing whole swathes of NPCs doing stupid things, like Homefront: The Fucking Revolution. I also like I liked how when I dodged in midair, she grabbed the ladder, that first ladder, and just started climbing. I like swift things like that, you know? These seamless transitions from one action to the other. You know, so many games will be like, okay, you've got to cease this animation entirely, wait for the prompt, press that, move to this animation, wait for that to be done. Whereas this feels smooth, you know? One of my issues with Final Fantasy 15, I think the flow of that game would be improved so much if a lot more of it had been, if a lot more animations could be cancelled. The most obvious would be in combat, where you can cancel an attack to dodge.
Just do what I say.
That would have improved the game tremendously. But other instances are like pressing X to interact with things, because X is bound to actions and also jumping. And I'm sure many of you... It's one of those things that's not big enough to bring up often, but when it's brought up, so many people, I imagine, will be like, oh yeah, that is fucking annoying. But how Noctis in Final Fantasy 15 jumps when you want to just press X to, you know, mount a chocobo or deal with your car. He jumps because you're partway through a running animation still. And more games need to do what NieR did here, where you can jump, dodge in midair, and just grab the ladder and get to climbing. So long as your levels are sensibly laid out to where you're not accidentally grabbing things when you're wanting to attack. You know. I'm actually not sure if this game, say, disables ladders in a combat situation. I didn't test that out. I just was startled by the instant grab of the ladder, startled and impressed. So, you know. It's a long-ass boss fight, isn't it? Still on it. Robot ain't fucked yet. Like, you think where this started, this fight, and how much health has been taken from it? And obviously this is one of those, I don't think it's a spoiler to say, clearly something's going to happen where you start doing way more damage. The whole fight's set up to tease that. But it does impress me just how long they've made this last, and feel good. Like, this whole thing was fun, I wasn't bored. Because again, it changes the feel of the gameplay, even though the gameplay itself doesn't change. But if this demo's any indication, then I think I'm going to enjoy Automata a lot more than I did the original NieR. One of the original NieR, whatever. Because the combat felt in the demo here really good to me. Simple, but fast and efficient, and a real nice flow to it. And hopefully they keep up boss fights on this scale and variants. You know, gameplay variants. As in, now we are in a robot ship. After climbing up the side of it and shooting it on a ledge, you know. The single boss fight itself basically has become very storied. It's gone through its own little tale, its own little saga, which is cool. Because a lot of boss fights these days are fairly throwaway, you know? Recently, just this month, Dead Rising 4 came out and took the whole psychopath boss fight thing and turned it into such a forgettable incidental thing, which is a shame. And the long lead up to this was quite satisfying. Sometimes a game can put too much lead up into a thing, and the payoff isn't satisfying. But this went on just long enough to where finally getting that big arm and clobbering the fucker felt really good to do. Now that is it proper gone now. As if you're looking at timestamps, I'm sure you can tell we're almost done with the video. So, I mean, that was more or less it. There's some more footage to go, but I'll start wrapping up now so I'm not rushing at the end like I normally end up doing when I do a pre-record. That was NieR Automata, demo, numbers. As I say, quite pleased. I see a lot of promise in this one. And as someone who really, really desperately has always wanted to like NieR, and I did, you know, I thought it was alright, I had to give it what some would consider a low score, but a middling score by my standards. I've always wanted to like it more. I've always wanted to love the game, because there's a lot to love about it. to overuse a phrase that game critics use, it was very charming. Had a lot of charm to it. And this one seems like it might be a little more serious. But then again, the opening to NieR, from what I recall, wasn't truly indicative of just how eccentric and oddly humorous it could be. So, who knows? They see really well for people wearing blindfolds, don't they?
Requesting
Our classic white-haired protagonists.
a black box reaction.
I'll tell you what, the amount of times I've had to destroy an enemy hostile with a black box reduction does not bear thinking about.
Fight with you. Truly.
The other
It was
mine.
2B, I was right. God, that was still a great joke I did earlier, wasn't it? I'm great at jokes. I realise it wasn't that great a joke. Anyway, that's NieR Automata. Coming March 7, 2017. Bye.